Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise and really get into the details behind some of the big stories circulating online. Today, we're diving deep into some pretty bold claims. Our main source is a YouTube video. It's called Future Beds, Broken Clif High Explorer's Guide to Sci-Fi World from the Clif High Sci-Fi World channel. And our mission today, well, we're going to look hard at these ideas of medbeds, instant healing machines. We'll also tackle advanced gene editing claims and, maybe surprisingly, a look back at a very old way of handling pain. All through the lens of, well, what's actually possible? What does the source say about the tech and the logistics?
That's absolutely right. Our job for you today is to sift through all this, figure out what's genuinely possible, what might be like way off in the future, and what frankly just doesn't hold up when you look at the technical side, the economics, or even, the history. It's really about understanding how innovation actually happens versus, well, the fantasy versions.
Okay, let's get into it then. So let's start with this big one, medbeds. It's a concept that's really gained traction in certain online spaces. We're talking about these beds that supposedly offer instant healing, total cure-alls. You hear names like Jim Willie, Charlie Ward, Simon Parks pushing this ideal, saying they're about to be rolled out. Hundreds are already hidden away somewhere. Carrie Cassidy, too, apparently. I mean, it sounds amazing, right? Almost too good to be true, like pure sci-fi.
Oh, it absolutely sounds like sci-fi. And, what's really useful about Clif High's perspective in the source video is how it grounds these claims in, well, reality. It tackles the massive practical and technical hurdles. The really key insight isn't just that it's probably fantasy, but understanding why we might fall for these kinds of hidden tech narratives. The source does a great job showing how real tech development works on a completely different scale, much more visible, much more driven by economics and logistics. So, the core idea is frequency healing, right? That means you'd need incredibly complex circuits, really sophisticated software. Now, if someone was actually developing the chips, the software for something that revolutionary, the entire tech industry would know. You'd see papers, patents, conference talks, years ahead of production, but there's just nothing. No chatter in industry journals, no public records of land buys for giant factories, no new shell core popping up. It's completely silent.
Right. The silence is suspicious in itself.
Exactly.
And it's not just the tech itself, is it? The whole idea of secretly rolling out thousands of these complex machines, it just doesn't sound practical.
Practical. It defies basic industrial logic. I mean, think about the money involved. Corporations don't secretly spend billions, maybe hundreds of billions, building hidden factories, setting up covert global shipping just to stash thousands of units away for some big reveal. That's not how any of this works. Not hardware, not manufacturing, not deployment.
So how does it normally work with real medical tech?
Well, look at MRI machines or even X-ray machines when they were new. It's a slow, visible process. You start with maybe 5 or 10 prototypes. They go into top research hospitals. Then comes years of public testing, finding flaws, fixing them, refining everything. It's incremental. Then gradually you start selling them, building based on demand and proofs that they actually work safely. The source makes this great point. You can't just build thousands of these things in secret and then find out they, fry people's toes or melt their butts, as they put it.
Right. The testing has to come first, and it's usually pretty public.
Totally. And that testing phase, for something like a medbed, it would be massive, unmissable.
Okay, so besides the direct tech and the rollout, you'd expect other signs too, wouldn't you, like in supporting industries?
Oh, absolutely. If you were genuinely gearing up to produce medbeds on a large scale, you'd see a huge spike in demand for rare earth minerals, for specialized manufacturing tools. Clif High draws a parallel. You can often track government or big industrial projects by looking at what their suppliers are buying. Like, if they were suddenly etching barcodes on coins, you'd see orders for, diamond dust printers or precision lasers skyrocket. We see nothing like that in the industries that would need to support medbed production. No unusual demand, no big equipment purchases.
And what about the disruption factor, if these things really worked?
And actually replaced big pharma, made drugs obsolete.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be a quiet secret. You'd expect massive, visible pushback, attempts to suppress the tech. Instead, we hear about this supposed secret plan for a grand reveal. The lack of any real-world resistance is another telling sign.
It really all points away from this imminent secret rollout. And there was another interesting technical point too, right? About older frequency methods.
Yes, exactly. The source argues that even the older frequency healing stuff, like from Rife, probably wouldn't work effectively today anyway. Why? Because our modern environment is just saturated with electromagnetic interference. That interference would likely scramble the original frequencies, making those old methods unreliable. It adds another layer of complexity to the whole frequency healing concept for medbeds.
Wow. Okay. So when you stack up the technical challenges, the lack of industrial evidence, the logistical impossibilities, the medbed claims look pretty shaky.
Shaky is putting it mildly. It paints a very clear picture of how real-world innovation works, and this isn't it.
It really seems like engineering complex machines has more real-world constraints than some might think. Okay, but what about engineering life itself? That leads us to the next big topic from the source. Genetic alteration. We hear a lot, especially in these woo world circles, about super soldiers, human-alien hybrids, often linked to CRISPR technology. Carrie Cassidy is mentioned again, talking about new critters and things like that.
Right, and this is another area where the source, Clif High, really cuts through the hype by focusing on the actual science. The key takeaway about CRISPR, according to the source, it's described bluntly as a failure for doing clean gene insertion.
A failure. But isn't it supposed to be this revolutionary gene editor?
Well, yes and no. It is a tool, but its main reliable function currently is described more like a burning machine. It crisps genes, meaning it's primarily designed and used to remove or disable problematic genes, not neatly slot in new ones. The source emphasizes it's wildly inaccurate. It doesn't just hit the target. It often damages genes nearby, sometimes even far away on the chromosome. The assessment is pretty stark. We are currently incompetent at doing gene splicing with the kind of precision needed for, creating Captain America.
Okay, incompetent. That's direct.
It is, and to really drive home how incredibly difficult this stuff is, even theoretically, the video brings up this fascinating kind of unexpected reference from the Talmud.
The Talmud.
Yeah. It apparently contains a story suggesting that even space aliens, referred to as L, engaged in genetic modification. But get this. The story says it took them 191 years just to create Adam, and another 7 for Eve, with lots of trial and error. Now, regardless of how you interpret that story literally, the source uses it to illustrate a point. Genetic modification is profoundly complex and time-consuming, even if you imagine super advanced tech. It's not a quick fix.
So forget instant super soldiers then. Even if someone somewhere had the tech and lacked the ethics.
That's the argument. If the capability really existed to make genetically enhanced super soldiers, you'd expect powerful groups with, let's say, no compunctions to be doing it like mad, as the source puts it. But there's no sign of that. In fact, they mention a video clip, apparently of Fauci's chief of staff at a WE meeting around 21/5/2016, and this person is visibly bouncing with excitement because they'd finally made some minor progress in gene editing.
Just minor progress causing that much excitement.
Exactly. That kind of reaction to what was likely a small incremental step really underlines how incredibly hard this field is and how far we are from actually building Superman. It just highlights this huge gap between the sci-fi claims and the actual scientific reality.
Right. It puts those claims of human-alien hybrids and super soldiers into perspective. The science just isn't anywhere close to that right now, based on this source. It's more hype than reality.
Precisely. The claims seem wildly overblown compared to the slow, careful pace of real genetic science.
Okay, so from debunking futuristic tech, the source takes a really sharp turn, doesn't it? Towards something much more grounded, almost ancient. It shifts to personal responsibility, preparing for potential breakdowns in, things we rely on every day, specifically medicine.
Yeah, it's quite a pivot, but it's presented as very relevant. Clif High focuses on the fragility of our modern supply chains, especially for pharmaceuticals. The video cites reports apparently over 320 medicines are having supply issues right now, with maybe 30 or 40 facing actual shortages or blockages.
Why that many?
That's the claim, and it explains why it's fragile. If an antibiotic production line, for example, has to shut down for any reason, it can take months to get it back online because the cleaning requirements are incredibly strict. Everything has to be scrubbed to this super degree of cleanness.
Months? Okay, I can see how that could cause problems.
Right. So given this potential vulnerability, the source kind of throws a curveball. It suggests people should think about taking personal responsibility for at least some aspects of their health, like pain management. And the specific, rather surprising recommendation, growing opium poppies.
Opium poppies?
Yeah.
Seriously? Does that lead?
Well, here's the claim from the source. It argues that in many places, simply growing the plants isn't necessarily illegal. Apparently, the genetics are so mixed up from centuries of cultivation, it's hard to legally prove a specific plant is the illegal Papaver somniferum. Now, possessing pure opium or morphine, That's illegal, absolutely. But the source suggests growing the plants or making what it calls opium tea might fall into a legal gray area. Disclaimer, we are absolutely not giving legal or medical advice here, just relaying the source material.
Okay, noted. Opium tea. That sounds archaic. How's that supposed to work? And why that specifically?
It is archaic, that's the point. Historically, the source explains you take the whole plant, the pod, leaves, stem, maybe some seeds, dry it, grind it up, and steep it in hot water. The key insight presented is that this whole plant tea isn't as intensely addictive as refined morphine or opium.
What?
Because the whole plant contains dozens of other alkaloids, besides the main pain-killing ones. These other compounds apparently moderate the effects, making it less intensely euphoric and addictive. Now, the source does say it can still be habit-forming with heavy continuous use, but claims it's different from the immediate hook of the pure stuff. And historically, this was apparently the standard way to manage serious pain from the 1800s right through to the 1950s. Think battlefield surgeries in the Civil War, or even California gold miners in the 1920s using it for chronic pain from hard labor. It was common.
Huh. Piece of history I wasn't aware of. And practically speaking, how easy is it to grow them, according to the source?
Very easy, apparently. They're perennials, meaning they come back year after year once established. They produce tons of seeds, thousands per plant. And those seeds? Cheap to buy online, supposedly, and they can be stored for ages, decades even, especially if frozen.
So the idea is basically shrinking your pharmaceutical supply chain down to your garden plot.
Pretty much. It's presented as a radical, maybe, but proactive step towards self-sufficiency for pain management if the modern systems falter. A very different approach to preparedness.
Definitely unconventional. It frames personal responsibility in a very direct way, especially facing potential disruptions. Quite the perspective shift. And that really brings us towards the end of this deep dive. Quite a journey today. We started by taking a hard look at those futuristic medbed claims, seeing how they stack up against technical and logistical reality based on Clif High's analysis. Then we examine the real state of gene editing versus the hype about super soldiers, again, finding a big gap. And finally, this surprising detour into history and personal preparedness with the opium poppy suggestion for potential supply chain issues.
And the running theme really is the need for critical evaluation, like we discussed. It's so important to look for actual evidence or the significant lack of it in public records, in industry activity, in basic logistical feasibility. Relying just on compelling stories or hearsay, well, it doesn't really help you navigate what's real. The future's definitely going to bring amazing things, no doubt. But understanding today's actual capabilities and limitations, that's crucial for making sense of it all.
Absolutely. So maybe here's a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on. Why do you think we're often so drawn to these ideas of secret, instant technological fixes, even when they seem to ignore the messy, visible process of real innovation? And thinking about that last part, in our complex world, how much power lies in simply understanding history, basic principles, and maybe taking some unconventional steps towards personal responsibility when facing uncertainty? Something to think about. We'll leave it there for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and we'll connect with you again next time.